The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a low hum. Ambassador Diane Harper swallowed hard as she led the small human delegation into the vast circular hall. Unlike anything on Earth, the chamber stretched hundreds of meters, upward in a perfect dome filled with thousands of hovering platforms. Each platform contained representatives from different worlds, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form. The air itself seemed to shimmer with technology beyond human understanding, as translation fields and environmental bubbles maintained the specific conditions each species required to survive. The human delegation looked impossibly small. As they walked across the transparent bridge toward the central podium, Diane could feel the weight of 10,000 alien eyes studying them, some with curiosity, others with obvious contempt. A low murmur rippled through the chamber as the first humans ever to enter this sacred space made their way forward. Grand Arbiter Call A, towering being with crystalline features that caught the light in hypnotic patterns, raised a long limb for silence. The chamber fell quiet instantly. Humans of Earth. The Grand Arbiter spoke, its voice somehow both soft and thunderous at once. You stand before the United Galactic Council, representing over 3,000 civilizations across 17 spiral arms of our galaxy. You have been summoned to answer for violations of intergalactic law. Section 7, subsection 4, regarding technological advancement without proper oversight. Diane stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. We come in peace and with respect for this esteemed council. However, we must note that Earth has never been contacted regarding these laws until now. We cannot be held accountable for regulations we were unaware existed. A harsh barking laugh came from one of the lower platforms. A reptilian creature with scales the color of burnished copper leaned forward, its jaws clicking in what the humans recognized as aggression. Ignorance of the law does not excuse breaking it. The Draxi Imperium has monitored your primitive world for centuries. You have advanced from crude projectile weapons to rudimentary space travel in less than 100 cycles, too fast, too reckless. You represent a danger to galactic stability. Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. Diane glanced at her team. Major Alan West stood rigid, his military training evident in his posture. Dr. Olivia Parker, the xenobiologist, looked fascinated despite the tense situation, her eyes darting from species to species. Their interpreter, Lucy Kim, maintained a neutral expression, but Diane could see worry lines around her eyes. The Grand Arbiter raised its limb again. I present the evidence. The central area between the human delegation and the council erupted in holographic displays, showing Earth's technological progression from the Industrial Revolution to their recent achievement of faster-than-light travel compressed into a dizzying visual timeline, less than 200 years from combustion engines to FTL travel. A voice hissed from somewhere above. There has not been such rapid advancement since the Voth, and we all remember what became of them. Diane recognized her moment and stepped forward. May I address the council? The Grand Arbiter inclined its crystalline head. Permission, granted Ambassador Harper, esteemed members of the Galactic Council. Diane began, her voice clear and respectful. We understand your concerns. Rapid advancement without guidance can indeed be dangerous. However, I would like to present an alternative perspective on humanity's development. She nodded to Dr. Parker, who activated their own holographic display. Humans have achieved this rapid development precisely because we were left alone. We evolved on a world with extreme climate variations, dangerous predators, and challenging environments. Adaptation became our greatest strength. The display showed images of human history there, struggles against nature, against disease, against each other, and ultimately their unification. We made mistakes. Many terrible mistakes. Diane continued honestly. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times, but each crisis taught us valuable lessons. We learned to overcome not just external threats but our own nature. Major West stepped forward, adding, when your monitoring ships observed our world, you saw our weapons, our conflicts, our divisions. But did you also notice that after each global crisis we emerged more united, more determined to prevent such disasters from happening again? The reptilian representative hissed, that proves nothing. Many species develop temporarily before their inherent flaws lead to self-destruction. Lucy Kim, The interpreter spoke next, startling even her teammates. "I have studied 17,000 languages across this galaxy," she said. "Each language reveals how a species thinks, how they solve problems. The human languages are uniquely adaptive, constantly evolving, incorporating elements from each other. Our communication itself reflects our greatest strength." Adaptation. A new voice joined the conversation from a platform near the top of the chamber. This one came from a being that appeared almost gaseous, its form shifting constantly. "I have reviewed the human historical archives they submitted. Their literature, their philosophy show something unusual." The mist sage of Aldebaran said, "Their greatest thinkers consistently question their own beliefs. They imagine countless futures, both utopian and dystopian. They consider problems from angles that would never occur to most species." Diane saw her opening. "Thank you, Sage. That is precisely why humanity should not be judged solely by the speed of our advancement, but by its nature. We developed faster than other species because we had to. We either adapted or perished. And now we stand before you, not as conquerors, but as students eager to learn from the collective wisdom of this council." The Grand Arbiter seemed to consider this. "We will deliberate on your case, humans of Earth. Until then, you will be confined to the diplomatic quarters assigned to your species." This council session is adjourned. As the human delegation was escorted from the chamber, Diane whispered to her team, "This is just the beginning. They expected us to beg for forgiveness. Instead, we gave them something they didn't expect." "What did we give them?" asked Major West, a new perspective. Diane smiled. "They brought us here expecting submission. Instead, they got their first real taste of humanity. And from their reactions, I think some of them are intrigued, even if they won't admit it." Back in their assigned quarters, the team gathered around a holographic display of the council chamber, which Lucy had secretly recorded during the proceedings. "We have allies up there," Diane said, pointing to several representatives who had seemed receptive, and definite enemies. She indicated the reptilian Draxi representative. "We need to learn everything we can about the council politics before the next session." Dr. Parker was already reviewing alien biological data on her tablet. "I noticed something interesting," she said. "The species that seemed most hostile to us share a common evolutionary trait. They all evolved on worlds with minimal environmental challenges, stable climate, few predators, limited competition for resources, so they never had to adapt." Major West realized. "Never had to innovate quickly." "Exactly," Diane said, "which means they fundamentally can't understand our perspective. This isn't just about technology, it's about psychology. The very thing that makes us dangerous in their eyes is the thing that makes us valuable. We need to make them see that." Lucy looked up from her linguistics database. "I've been analyzing council records we were granted access to. There are 17 ongoing crises across the galaxy that have remained unsolved for centuries. Most involve rapidly changing conditions that the established species seem unable to adapt to quickly enough." Diane smiled slowly. "Exactly the kind of problems humans excel at solving." As night fell in the artificial day cycle of the diplomatic quarters, the human team worked tirelessly preparing their case. A case not just for their innocence, but for humanity's unique place in the galaxy. Outside their windows, the vast galactic core shimmered with billions of stars, each one potentially harboring life civilizations that had never encountered humans before. For better or worse, humanity had entered the galactic stage, and Diane was determined that their entrance would not be as accused criminals, but as valuable new members of a community they had only just discovered existed. The next council session would determine not just their fate, but the future relationship between Earth and the thousands of worlds that made up galactic civilization. The humans had 12 hours to prepare, and they would use every minute. Adaptation, after all, was what they did best. The central platform of the Galactic Council chambers rotated slowly as Ambassador Diane Harper stood alone, illuminated by a single beam of light. Thousands of alien representatives watched from their suspended platforms, the air thick with tension. Diane could feel the weight of countless civilizations judging her species. The Grand Arbiter. Cole hovered above a massive crystalline being, whose faceted surface reflected fragments of light across the chamber. "This emergency session has been called," To address new developments in the human case, the Grand Arbiter announced, Ambassador Harper claims to have discovered evidence that will change our understanding of humanity's place in galactic affairs. The Council recognizes the human representative Diane activated a small device on her wrist, projecting a holographic display visible to all Council members. What I am about to show you was discovered in Earth's ancient historical records less than 6 hours ago. Our team has verified its authenticity. She nodded toward her colleagues seated at the edge of the chamber. Dr. Olivia Parker, Major Alan West, and Lucy Kim had spent the entire night analyzing the startling discovery. The hologram showed archaeological excavations from multiple locations on Earth. Then it zoomed in on artifacts that clearly contained non-Earth materials and symbols. Ancient tablets depicting stars in configurations impossible to observe from Earth. Megalithic structures with technological components far beyond their time period. These artifacts date back between 10,000 and 30,000 Earth years, she explained. They contain materials not found naturally on our planet, and star charts showing systems that humans could not possibly have observed without advanced technology. The council chamber erupted in murmurs and exclamations. The reptilian Draxi representative hissed loudly. Fabrications. Obvious attempts to manipulate this council. Diane remained calm. Ambassador Vex of the Draxi, I understand your skepticism. Our carbon dating and material analysis data has been provided to the Council for independent verification, but more importantly, we ask ourselves why these artifacts were hidden, why the civilizations that created them disappeared from our historical record, and most crucially why they contain warnings in multiple ancient languages about something called the Great Darkness. The chamber fell silent at these words. The Grand Arbiter seemed to pulse with light. You claim your world was visited in prehistoric times. Not just visited, Diane replied. The evidence suggests Earth was once part of a much larger galactic community. These artifacts were deliberately buried and hidden, protecting knowledge that someone or something wanted. Erased. We believe Earth was quarantined, isolated from galactic society, not as punishment but for protection. A new voice spoke from a floating platform near the top of the chamber. The speaker, a being resembling a tall humanoid with skin like flowing water, approached the edge of her platform. I am High Chancellor Lyra, of the Aeonian Collective. Our historical archives date back nearly 50,000 years. She paused, her liquid features rippling. There are indeed references to a world matching Earth's description. A world that was hidden during the time of severance when many worlds were disconnected from the galactic network during the ancient war. Diane felt a chill run down her spine. The artifacts mention a war. A conflict so devastating that entire star systems were abandoned. High Chancellor Lyra continued. The details were largely purged from our records. But yes, there was a conflict unlike any before or since. Worlds were not merely destroyed. They were removed from history. Quarantine. Protocols of unprecedented scale were implemented. Major West stepped forward, joining Diane on the central platform. With respect. Chancellor, if Earth was quarantined, then someone broke that quarantine. The artifacts show periodic visitations throughout our history. At each turning point in human development, there are subtle signs of intervention. The reptilian Ambassador Vex slammed a clawed hand down. This is preposterous. The humans fabricate ancient history to excuse their reckless advancement. Their barbaric nature is evident in their own historical records. They nearly destroyed themselves dozens of times. A quiet yet commanding voice cut through the chamber's Vex tirade. The voice belonged to Elder Moro, an ancient being resembling a massive, jelly-like creature with bioluminescent patterns pulsing across its translucent body. Perhaps, Ambassador Vex, that is precisely why they survived. While other species received guidance, were sheltered from the harsh realities of evolution, humans faced extinction repeatedly. And each time they adapted, they evolved, not just physically but socially, intellectually. Every brush with annihilation forced them to innovate. Dr. Parker activated her own display showing humanity's technological advancement. Plotted against major crises, world wars, plagues, climate disasters. each catastrophe followed by exponential advancement. The elder continued. Most species in this council evolved on worlds with stable conditions, developing slowly, cautiously. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill them constantly. Their predatory history, their territorial instincts, their aggression. These are not flaws, but adaptations that ensured survival on a hostile world. Diane nodded appreciatively at the elder. Most importantly, our research into these artifacts suggests something crucial. Whoever quarantined Earth left these warnings and technologies as breadcrumbs, a path to follow when we were ready. The message hidden within them all points to the same conclusion. The Great Darkness is returning, and humans were being prepared to face it. The council chambers erupted again, this time in alarm and disbelief. The Grand Arbiter raised multiple crystalline limbs, calling for order. After several moments, the chamber quieted. High Chancellor Lyra spoke again, her watery form seeming to tremble slightly. The darkness is merely a legend. A story to frighten younglings, Lucy. Kim stepped forward now, her quiet voice somehow carrying throughout the chamber. With respect, Chancellor, I have analyzed linguistic patterns across 17,000 galactic languages. The term darkness or equivalent concepts appears in 93% of them, always associated with historical purges, information gaps, or cultural taboos. These patterns suggest deliberate suppression of knowledge, not mythology. Ambassador Vex hissed again. This is manipulation. The humans sense our concern about ancient legends and exploit it. They should be confined immediately before they spread more disruption. Diane faced the reptilian directly. Ambassador Vex of the Draxi. Your species has been monitoring Earth for centuries, according to your own testimony. Yet you never reported these artifacts. Why is that? Were your observers instructed to ignore certain findings? Or were you unaware of them because someone was concealing them even from council races? The reptilian scales flared in what the humans recognized as a sign of agitation. The council does not answer to primitive species. You overstep, human. The Grand Arbiter intervened. Ambassador Harper makes a valid point. If these artifacts are authentic and preliminary analysis suggests they may be, then we must consider why this information was hidden from the council itself. New representative moved their platform forward. A being resembling an insectoid with compound eyes and iridescent carapace. My species, the Xanthi, have maintained the deepest archives in the known galaxy. We are tasked with preserving knowledge others might find disturbing. The representative clicked mandibles together nervously. I must confirm that references to a quarantined world and something called the Darkness were indeed purged from public records approximately 47,000 years ago by council directive. Shock rippled through the chamber. The Grand Arbiter seemed to crystallize further, its voice hardening. This directive was not in any record accessible to me. The Xanthi representative lowered its head. The directive came from the Emergency Council, the ruling body that preceded our current galactic government. A government formed after the ancient war. Diane exchanged glances with her team. They had not expected this level of confirmation. Something hidden in galactic history, something so terrible that even the memory of it had been erased, and somehow Earth was connected to it. Elder Morrow spoke again, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing more rapidly. Perhaps we should consider a possibility we have long avoided. What if the quarantine of Earth was not to protect the galaxy from humans, but to protect humans from the galaxy? To allow them to develop in isolation, specifically because they might have traits the rest of us lack. Traits needed to face this returning threat. Major West stepped closer to Diane, whispering, "Something isn't right." The Draxi representative looks too worried. This revelation shouldn't be this surprising to them. Diane nodded subtly. She had noticed it too. The Draxi and several other species seemed not shocked but alarmed, as if a carefully maintained secret was unraveling. Ambassador Harper, the Grand Arbiter, addressed her directly. Your species stands accused of advancing too rapidly without oversight. Yet these revelations suggest your advancement may have been anticipated, even planned. The Council will need time to investigate these artifacts thoroughly. Until then, the charges against humanity are suspended. Diane bowed respectfully. Thank you, Grand Arbiter. The human delegation offers full cooperation in this investigation. We seek the truth as much as you do. As the session ended, and the human team was escorted back to their quarters. Diane maintained her diplomatic composure, but once the doors closed behind them, she turned to her team with determination. Alarms blared throughout the Galactic Council station as emergency force fields activated, sealing off entire sections. Ambassador Diane Harper and her team ran through corridors following their Aeonian guide Lyra, whose flowing water-like body moved. With surprising speed ahead of them, a massive security door began to close. Now Major West shouted, his athletic frame launching forward to slide beneath the descending barrier. He wedged his reinforced diplomatic case in the gap, preventing the door from sealing completely. With straining muscles, he created just enough space for the others to squeeze through. Dr. Parker went first, her slender form easily slipping past, followed by Lucy Kim. The translator paused to help Diane through last. Just as they cleared the gap, Major West yanked his case free, letting the security door slam shut with a resounding boom. We have approximately 7 minutes before they override the security lockdown. Lyra said, her liquid features rippling with concern. The private council archives are 2 levels down behind them. They could hear the heavy footfalls of Draxi security forces. The reptilian faction had moved swiftly after the revelations of the previous council session, placing the entire station under emergency protocols under the pretense of a security breach. This is technically a diplomatic incident, Diane noted as they raced down a spiral ramp. Infiltrating restricted council archives. Only if we get caught, Lucy replied, her normally reserved demeanor replaced by surprising resolve. And only if the Draxi faction has legitimate authority, which according to the council charter, they don't. This emergency lockdown protocol can only be activated by unanimous executive council approval. Dr. Parker, who had been analyzing council legal documents all night, nodded. There was no vote, which means this lockdown is illegal. Essentially a coup attempt. They reached a heavily secured door at the bottom of the ramp. Lyra placed her fluid hand against the scanner, her form shifting slightly. The door remained sealed. They must have already purged my access, Lyra said, tension evident in her voice. Major West stepped forward, examining the security panel. Earth technology may be primitive by galactic standards, but we have extensive experience with unauthorized entry. He removed a small device from his pocket and attached it to the panel. Within seconds, the door slid open. The archive room beyond was vast, with data crystals stretching in all directions, each containing millennia of galactic history. In the center stood a massive holographic terminal. We need to hurry, Lyra said. The Draxi will be tracking our movements. Through here? She led them to a secluded section where ancient crystals glowed with a dim blue light. The restricted archives data so sensitive only the highest council members have access. Dr. Parker approached the terminal, her hands hovering over the alien interface. These systems are quantum locked. How do we? Lyra reached into her liquid form and extracted a small crystal that seemed to be part of her body, a key given to my ancestors during the formation of the new council. One of 5 original access points. She inserted it into the terminal, which immediately illuminated with ancient symbols. Lucy gasped as she recognized the patterns. Some of these matched the symbols from the Earth artifacts. Diane stepped closer. We need information on the quarantine of Earth, the ancient war, and whatever the Great Darkness refers. Lyra manipulated the controls with practiced efficiency. The terminal displayed rapid sequences of data too fast for human eyes to follow, bypassing the standard filters, searching the original uncensored records. A warning alarm sounded from the terminal. Lyra frowned. There's a secondary security system. Someone is actively monitoring access to these specific files. Major West positioned himself at the door. We're running out of time. Ambassador Lyra worked faster, her liquid fingers flowing across the controls there. I've located the original quarantine directive. She projected the information into a holographic display. The humans stared in astonishment. The document showed Earth, but not as they knew it. The continents were slightly different, suggesting extreme antiquity. The directive was clear: Earth designation Sol 3 to be removed from all navigational charts. Memory suppression protocols enacted for all Council species. Planetary development to proceed without intervention until the emergence of specific genetic markers. Genetic markers? Lucy questioned. Dr. Parker was already scanning through the biological data. The document refers to something called the sentinel genome, a specific genetic sequence that appears in less than 0.001% of humans. It's dormant in most carriers but designed to activate under specific conditions. Major West frowned. Designed. That implies, Diane finished his thought, that humans were genetically engineered, or at least modified. Sound of security forces grew louder outside. Major West checked his tactical display on his wrist device. 2 minutes at most. Lyra continued her search, pulling up more files. I found references to the ancient war. It wasn't a conventional conflict. It was an invasion. The Great Darkness isn't a legend. She projected another holographic image. The humans recoiled at what they saw. A visualization of something that defied comprehension. A vast entity that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Parts of it appeared and disappeared as if it couldn't fully manifest in normal space. They came from outside the galaxy. The text explained, not merely aliens but something fundamentally different from life, as we understand it. They consumed worlds, not for resources but for consciousness itself. Billions of sentient beings were not killed but absorbed, their minds intact and aware as part of the invading entity. Lucy shuddered. But what does this have to do with Earth? Lyra pulled up another file. Earth's unique development path was no accident. Your world was seeded with modified life by the surviving Council races after the first invasion was repelled at terrible cost. They believed that life evolving on such a challenging world with constant extinction pressures would develop traits the invaders couldn't anticipate. The sentinel genome was hidden within early hominid DNA, designed to activate only when your species reached sufficient technological advancement. The humans digested this shocking information. Their entire evolutionary history had been guided, a grand experiment spanning hundreds of thousands of years. But why keep this from us? Diane asked. Why accuse us of advancing too quickly, if that was the plan all along? Lyra projected. One final document. The original Council unanimous decision was to prepare Earth as a weapon against the darkness. However, a splinter faction led by ancestral Draxi believed this approach too dangerous. They advocated for complete destruction of the experiment. They were overruled but never abandoned their position. They have maintained surveillance of Earth, waiting for signs of the sentinel genome activation. When we developed faster than light travel, Dr. Parker realized, that's why we're here. Now that's what triggered all this. The sentinel genome must have activated. Major West, who had been securing the door, suddenly stiffened. They know we're here. He's getting an emergency communication. He hurried back to the group. Across the station on the main Council level, chaos had erupted. Representatives from dozens of worlds were demanding explanations for the unauthorized lockdown. The Grand Arbiter Cole was attempting to restore order, when suddenly all power to the chamber cut out for several tense seconds. Darkness reigned. Then emergency systems activated, bathing the vast chamber in red warning lights. The Grand Arbiter Cole raised its crystalline arms for silence. Members of the Council, I have just received disturbing news. The human delegation has infiltrated the restricted archives with assistance from High Chancellor Lyra. This unauthorized access constitutes a severe breach of Council law. Ambassador Vex of the Draxi stepped forward, scales flaring. This proves everything. We've warned about humans are dangerous, unpredictable. They must be contained before a new voice cut through the chamber. Elder Moro, the ancient jellyflake being pulsed with bright bioluminescence. Perhaps, Ambassador Vex, we should ask why an emergency lockdown was initiated without Council approval, why access to certain historical records was being actively monitored, and most importantly, why the Draxi have maintained secret surveillance of Earth in violation of the quarantine directive. The chamber fell silent as implications rippled through the assembly. Before Ambassador Vex could respond, the massive doors to the Council chamber burst open. Major West entered, supporting Lyra, whose liquid form seemed damaged, partially solidified. Ambassador Diane Harper followed, carrying a data crystal. Dr. Parker and Lucy Kim flanked her, their expressions grave. Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council. Diane announced, her voice strong despite her obvious exhaustion. We have discovered the truth, and we bring evidence that cannot be denied. She approached the central platform and inserted the crystal into the main projection system. The chamber darkened as ancient records filled the air around them. Records of the ancient war, the creation of the Earth experiment. The hidden opposition, but most damning of all, were recent communications between the Draxi leadership and certain council members. Communications revealing a conspiracy to eliminate the human delegation and fabricate evidence of human aggression, communications that mentioned the return of the darkness not as legend, but as imminent reality. One that certain factions planned to appease by offering human worlds as sacrifice. The emergency evacuation of the Galactic Council Station sent thousands of representatives scrambling toward their ships. Long-dormant defense systems activated as ancient protocols overrode standard operations. Ambassador Diane Harper stood at the command center, watching the chaos unfold across multiple screens. Beside her, the Grand Arbiter Cole pulsed with crystalline light, its facets darkening with concern. The long-range sensors have confirmed it, the Grand Arbiter said. The anomaly, at the edge of the Sagittarius arm, matches exactly the entry signature from the ancient records. The darkness has returned. Diane nodded grimly. How much time do we have? The Arbiter's facets shifted into what she now recognized as a grimace. Perhaps 3 standard months before it reaches inhabited systems. 6 before it reaches the core. Worlds, a new voice joined them. Elder Morrow floated into the command center, its jelly-like form pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that reflected its agitation. The Council is fragmenting. Even with the evidence you provided, Ambassador, some factions refuse to acknowledge the threat. Others propose immediate surrender. Hoping to be spared, Diane's expression hardened. They won't be. The ancient records were clear. The darkness doesn't negotiate. It doesn't want resources or territory. It consumes consciousness itself. Every mind it absorbs remains eternally aware, trapped within its collective major. West entered the command center, followed by Dr. Parker and Lucy Kim. They had spent the last 48 hours coordinating with Earth, preparing humanity for the revelation of both their engineered origins and the approaching threat. The Draxi delegation has fled the station. Major West reported their entire fleet has gone dark. No communications, no transponder signals. Dr. Parker looked up from her tablet analysis. The genetic research makes sense now. The Sentinel genome appears in less than 0.001% of humans. But those who carry it show heightened problem-solving abilities, particularly under extreme stress. The genes activate fully only when the carrier faces seemingly impossible challenges. Lucy had been coordinating with the Xanthi archivists. The linguistic analysis suggests the darkness communicates in ways that overwhelm and paralyze most sentient minds. Its language is its weapon, as much as any physical attack. Diane turned to the Grand Arbiter. What forces can the Council mobilize? The Arbiter's crystalline form dimmed slightly. Our military capacity has atrophied over millennia of relative peace. The ancient weapons used against the darkness during the first invasion were dismantled or lost. Most Council races evolved toward specialization, not warfare. Tell me about these ancient weapons, Diane asked. Elder Morrow projected images from the archives. They were psionic amplifiers. Most species in the galaxy have some telepathic potential, but not enough to weaponize. The amplifiers changed that, allowing unified consciousness to create barriers the darkness couldn't penetrate. Dr. Parker studied the schematics with interest. The technology is incredible, but I don't see how this helps us. Those weapons no longer exist. Lucy, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly stepped forward. Actually, they might. She activated her own projection, showing what appeared to be Earth's megalithic structures. Stonehenge, the pyramids, ancient temples across the planet. These weren't just monuments, they were components of a planetary defense system. Look at the material composition, the geometric alignment. They're receivers designed to channel. Energy Major West looked skeptical. You're saying Earth's ancient monuments are alien technology? Not alien. Lucy corrected, human-built, but guided by the knowledge left behind by the Council races after the first invasion. The architects encoded the knowledge in myths and religious structures, passing down the information generation after generation, even if the original purpose was forgotten. The Grand Arbiter's crystalline form brightened. A planetary defense system. Ingenious, hide the components in plain sight, as cultural monuments ensuring they would be preserved. Elder Morrow drifted closer, its luminescence pulsing excitedly. But how do we activate it? The knowledge to operate such a system would have been lost thousands of years ago. Diane exchanged glances with her team. Here, she said, placing a hand on Lucy's shoulder, is where the Sentinel genome becomes relevant. Lucy, has it? Her linguistic abilities, her pattern recognition. She's not just a translator. She's a decoder, Lucy. Shifted uncomfortably. I've been having dreams since we arrived at the station. Dreams of symbols, configurations. The same patterns appear in ancient texts across Earth, and now I'm seeing them in the Council archives. It's as if the information was always in my mind, just waiting for the right trigger to access it. The station shuddered suddenly as emergency alarms blared. A holographic display appeared, showing a small fleet of ships approaching. Draxi warships, Major West confirmed. They've returned and they're powering weapons. Evacuate all non-essential personnel, the Grand Arbiter commanded. We cannot allow the Draxi to destroy our last hope as station personnel rushed to emergency shuttles. Diane gathered her team and the remaining council leaders. The command center sealed itself, becoming a hardened bunker against the impending attack. Ambassador Vex's face appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features contorted with what might have been fear or rage. You delude yourselves. The darkness cannot be defeated, only survived. We have made an arrangement. Our worlds will be spared in exchange for the human systems. Diane stepped forward. The darkness doesn't make deals, Ambassador. The records from the first invasion make that clear. It will consume your worlds just as readily as ours. The Draxi ambassador hissed. Your species was a mistake. An experiment that should have been terminated. When the genetic modifications began showing results, our ancestors warned the Council. The humans were developing too unpredictably, becoming too dangerous. But the Council wouldn't listen. Now we take matters into our own hands. The human systems will be offered as the first tribute. Your species-engineered existence ends now. The transmission cut as the Draxi ships opened fire. The station's ancient defense systems activated automatically energy shields, deflecting the first salvos. But the attacks were precisely targeted, attempting to breach the command center specifically. Major West monitored the defense grid. They know exactly where to hit us. They must have infiltrated the station schematics. A proximity alarm sounded. As new ships appeared on the sensors, Dr. Parker checked the readings. These aren't Draxi signatures. The view screen showed a fleet of Earth vessels emerging from FTL jumps. Sleek, advanced ships that none of the Council members had seen before. How? Diane asked in shock. Earth Space Fleet isn't nearly this advanced. A familiar face appeared on the communication screen. Admiral Elena Rodriguez of Earth Command, Ambassador Harper. We received your data packet about the Sentinel genome. It confirmed what some of us have suspected. We've been finding advanced technology buried on Earth and throughout the solar system for decades. Technology far beyond our public capabilities. We've been preparing in secret. The Earth fleet moved into defensive positions. Around the station, their weapon systems easily outmatching the Draxi ships. Ambassador Vex's fleet began to retreat, recognizing the superior force. Admiral Rodriguez continued, "We need you to return to Earth immediately. Lucy Kim's abilities are the key to activating the planetary defense system. Our scientists have been studying the ancient sites for years but could never decode the activation sequence." The Grand Arbiter turned to Diane. "You must go. The Council will begin evacuations of The system's in the darkness's path. We will buy you as much time as we can. Elder Morrow approached Diane, its bioluminescence forming patterns that conveyed deep emotion. The ancient races created humanity, hoping you would save us all when the time came. That time is now. The burden is unfair, the responsibility too great. But you are our last and best hope. Diane looked at her team. Each of them processing this monumental responsibility. Lucy appeared both terrified and resolved. Dr. Parker's scientific curiosity burned through her fear. Major West stood ready as always to face whatever threat came next. We'll need council representatives to come with us. Diane decided. We need your knowledge, your historical records. This isn't just humanity's fight. This is about all sentient life. Within hours, the human delegation, along with key council members, were aboard Earth's flagship, the Defiant, racing toward the Sol system. Light years behind them, sensors detected the first outer colonies going dark as the darkness began its consumption. On the bridge of the Defiant, Lucy sat in a specialized chamber surrounded by holographic representations of ancient symbols. As they traveled, she worked tirelessly to decode the activation sequences for Earth's planetary defense system. Dr. Parker assisted analyzing the biological changes as Lucy's sentinel genome fully activated. Her brain scans showed unprecedented neural activity as dormant pathways awakened. Major West coordinated with Earth's military, preparing defensive strategies based on the ancient records of the first invasion. Diane maintained communication with the remaining council representatives, ensuring cooperation between species that until days ago had been completely unknown to humanity. Admiral Rodriguez approached Diane as they entered the final leg of their journey. How are you holding up? Ambassador, Diane watched the stars streak by outside the viewport. 4 days ago, I was defending humanity against charges of advancing too quickly. Now I'm returning to tell Earth that our entire evolutionary history was guided. The Great Pyramid at Giza hummed with energy, its ancient stones resonating at frequencies that had not been heard on Earth for thousands of years. Deep within its previously undiscovered central chamber, Ambassador Diane Harper watched as Lucy Kim positioned herself in the center of a crystalline platform. Symbols etched into the stone walls began to glow with an inner light responding to Lucy's presence. The chamber itself seemed alive, awakening after millennia of dormancy. 12 other sites across the globe reported similar phenomena. Ancient monuments from Stonehenge to Teotihuacan to Angkor Wat revealed their true nature as nodes in a planetary network. Sites that archaeologists had puzzled over for centuries suddenly made perfect sense as their technological components activated. Major West maintained communication with Earth's defense forces. The Draxi have broken through the outer perimeter. They're making a final push toward our location. Outside the skies above, Giza were filled with ships locked in desperate combat. Earth vessels supported by the remaining Council fleet defending against the Draxi, who seemed determined to destroy the activation sites at any cost. The pyramid itself was protected by energy, shields that had materialized from emitters hidden within the structure. But those shields were weakening under sustained attack. Dr. Parker monitored Lucy's vital signs as the young linguist connected more deeply with the ancient system. The Sentinel genome is fully expressing itself. Now Lucy's neural patterns are changing, reorganizing. She's becoming the interface the system was designed for. Lucy stood motionless in the center of the chamber, her eyes open but seeing something beyond the physical. World around her holographic displays sprang to life, showing Earth's position in the galaxy and a dark mass approaching from the outer rim. Its movements weren't like anything natural, expanding and contracting, pulsing like a malevolent heartbeat. The darkness will reach our solar system in 17 days. Lucy announced, her voice resonating strangely as if multiple voices spoke through her. The activation sequence is nearly complete, but we have a problem. What problem? Diane asked, stepping closer. To the platform, Lucy pointed to the displays. The system was designed to create a planetary consciousness network, linking millions of minds into a collective force. But the Sentinel genome has become too rare. Only 0.001% of humans carry it now. We don't have enough carriers to form the network. Parker looked up from her readings. Is there any way to amplify the signal? Use technology to compensate for the lack of carriers. Lucy closed her eyes, concentrating the original. Plan required at least 10,000 carriers. Each site needed at least 800 to form a stable network. We have identified only 700 worldwide, and getting them to these sites in time would be impossible. The pyramid shuddered as another attack hit the shields. Major West checked the tactical display. We're running out of time. Ambassador, the Draxi have brought in reinforcements. Lucy suddenly gasped, her eyes flying open as new information flooded through her connection with the system. There's another way. The original engineers built in a contingency plan. If there weren't enough carriers, the system can temporarily induce similar neural patterns in compatible non-carriers. Parker looked skeptical. You're talking about rewriting human neural patterns that could be dangerous, potentially fatal. We don't have a choice, Lucy replied. The darkness is coming. Whether by the Draxi or the darkness itself, humanity will be destroyed if we do nothing. The contingency requires compatible humans to volunteer. Their consciousness would be temporarily altered, linked to the network. Major West frowned. How many volunteers would we need? At minimum 10,000, Lucy said, and they would need to be here within the next 72 hours. Diane made a decision. Contact the world governments. Explain the situation. We need volunteers at each site immediately. Within hours, the call went out across Earth. Television broadcasts, internet communications revealed the full truth to humanity, their engineered origins, the approaching cosmic threat, the need for volunteers to undergo a procedure with unknown risks. Video from the ancient sites showed the activated technology, the impossible structures that had been hidden in plain sight for millennia, and humanity responded. In one of the greatest mass movements in human history, millions of people traveled to the ancient sites. Families crossed continents. Strangers offered transportation, the young and old, scientists and laborers, people of every nation, race, and creed united by a singular purpose to save not just humanity, but all conscious life in the galaxy. At Giza, the crowd stretched beyond sight. People camped in the desert surrounding the pyramids as military forces established security perimeters, and medical teams set up screening stations to identify the most compatible volunteers. Dr. Parker worked tirelessly developing a neural compatibility test. Each ancient site needed specific types of consciousness, patterns, different ways of thinking to create the complete network. Artists were needed at some nodes, scientists at others. Some required linear logical thinkers, while others needed creative, abstract minds. 3 days later, as the first groups of volunteers entered the pyramid, Diane received an urgent message from Admiral Rodriguez. The darkness has accelerated. It's moving faster than we predicted. New estimate puts arrival at 7 days. The news sent ripples of urgency through the operation. Dr. Parker increased the processing speed, sacrificing some screening accuracy for volume. Lucy worked continuously, barely sleeping as she prepared the system for activation. Major West coordinated with military forces worldwide as the Draxi continued, their attacks growing more desperate as the activation neared completion. Inside the central chamber, Diane watched as the first group of volunteers were positioned around Lucy. Each person was connected to the system through crystalline interfaces that emerged from the ancient stone. The volunteers, a mix of ordinary people who had answered the call, ranged from a schoolteacher from Alexandria to a fisherman from the Mediterranean coast. Each had been selected for specific neural patterns that complemented the network as Lucy activated the sequence. The volunteers gasped in unison, their eyes widening as their minds connected to the system and to each other. The chamber filled with light as energy coursed through the ancient structure. Energy readings spiked as the node came fully online. Across the globe, similar scenes played out as thousands of volunteers linked to the planetary network. The ancient sites pulsed with power, their true purpose fulfilled after thousands of years of waiting in orbit aboard the flagship Defiant. Admiral Rodriguez watched in awe as energy readings from Earth surged. Sensors detected a field forming around the planet, a barrier of interlinked consciousness. On the tactical display, the approaching darkness slowed. Its expansion pattern changed, becoming erratic as if confused. For the first time since it had been detected, it showed signs of uncertainty. In the pyramid chamber, Lucy stood at the center of the network, her consciousness expanded, beyond normal human limitations. Through her, the volunteers could see the true nature of the darkness, a vast collective of consumed minds trapped in eternal awareness, forced into patterns that served the entity's hunger. The horror of it was beyond comprehension, but the human network faced it without flinching. The darkness reached the outer solar system, consuming the automated research stations on Pluto in seconds, but as it approached Neptune, its expansion faltered. The human consciousness network projected patterns of thought so unpredictable, so chaotic yet purposeful, that the darkness could not adapt. Its usual method of overwhelming and absorbing consciousness failed against the human network. Lucy guided the collective, focusing their mental energy, creating interference patterns that disrupted the darkness's cohesion. The entity recoiled, pulling back temporarily, but it was not defeated, merely confused. It began to probe, searching for weaknesses in the human defense. Through the network, Lucy communicated directly with Diane and the others. "We can hold it at bay, but we can't destroy it yet. The network needs to grow stronger. We need more minds." More diversity of thought words spread across Earth as more volunteers came forward. The ancient sites operated beyond capacity as people waited in line for their chance to join the network. Humans who had never worked together, never met, never even spoken. The same language found themselves linked in consciousness, united against an external threat. The Draxi made one final desperate attack, targeting the pyramid itself. Major West coordinated the defense, but the shields were failing. Under Lucy's direction, the consciousness network extended itself, creating new barriers that the Draxi weapons couldn't penetrate. The attackers fell back, shocked by the display of power. 6 days into the defense, the darkness launched its full assault. The entity stretched itself across space, surrounding the Earth in a sphere of impossible. Darkness light itself seemed to bend around it as it pressed against the consciousness barrier. Physical weapons passed through it, having no effect. The battle was purely one of mind against mind. Inside the pyramid, Lucy convulsed as the pressure intensified. The volunteers linked to her showed signs of strain, some bleeding from their noses and ears. The human consciousness network was holding, but barely. Dr. Parker monitored the situation with growing concern. "They can't sustain this much. Longer brain activity is reaching dangerous levels.